Welcome to the Orthocast. Today our guest is Orthodox Loner. His name is Sava. He's living in Serbia. I'm sure you've seen some of his videos. They show up in my recommended a lot. He's had a lot of really viral clips in talking about the writings of Holy Fathers and some really amazing Orthodox chants. Thank you so much for joining us. And my first question for you is, what was your upbringing like? Did you ever have an atheist phase? What was your childhood experiences like with religion?
Thank you for having me, Kyle.
Yeah.
Well, I was baptized when I was 3 years old, as most of the Serbian children are.
Mm.
And honestly, that's pretty much it. Like, my parents never brought me to church. They never told me anything about God or anything. And they themselves weren't spiritual in any sense. And it was like that for a quite some time. Um, there were moments, obviously, in life when I was maybe angry at God, as everybody as everyone is at some point. Um, but yeah, it took me 20 years to even learn the basic teachings of Christianity. And I mean, there were like certain circumstances in life that kind of led me to it. And these Christian debates on YouTube were quite edifying at first because the intellectual part of the Christianity was the first thing that really seemed appealing to me. It wasn't the morality aspect, it wasn't necessarily the meaning of life, but these debates, these intellectual arguments were really interesting to me. And so, since I wasn't part of any, like I was baptized Orthodox, but I wasn't part of any Christian tradition growing up, I had absolutely zero bias toward any tradition. Like I didn't care about if you're Catholic, if you're Baptist at that point. So I was ready to give an equal chance to every tradition. So no one can tell me that, oh, you are Orthodox because you were born Orthodox in an Orthodox country. That wasn't a factor for me. So I started reading the Gospels. I started looking for a church. I visited few denominations prior to settling in Orthodoxy, even though I live like literally 20 seconds away from the church because it's just across the street. And it was the last church I checked out because I was
Wow.
intimidated by Orthodoxy at first and by the priest. And I thought he was like grumpy old dude, but that's not the case.
Wow. Wow, that's really cool. And so growing up, you probably did you just go to like church services for like the big events like Christmas or, Slava or anything?
Absolutely, absolutely nothing. I
Oh,
visited
wow.
few
Mm.
Slavas, of course, but
Hmm.
I never celebrated myself. Like I had no contact with the divine whatsoever.
Wow. And so it was watching debates online. It spoke to the logic of you. And this was it debates in English, like a lot of these like English YouTube?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it was actually Cliff Connetly and his son.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I criticized them a lot,
Yeah.
but I actually first started by looking at their videos, and they were really helpful. And I hope that God will count that in because they were really helpful for someone who knew nothing about Christianity whatsoever. And I mean, Cliff started mentioning the Gospels a lot, the word Gospels,
Mm-hmm.
Gospels, and I didn't know what the Gospel means. I mean, later I saw it in Serbian and I realized that, oh yeah, it's that.
Mm.
So that the gospel message, that gospel like word was echoing in my head, and I started reading it,
Wow.
and everything started from there.
Wow. Yeah, that's what's good about some of these figures, even though, they're not perfect and we're gonna, pray that they become orthodox, is they can be a good like starting place for people.
Yeah.
And so how did you eventually get into orthodoxy? Was it like seeing more debates online or specific Orthodox fathers talking?
Well, first of all, it was the when I realized the need for the communion, that I
Hmm.
need to partake
Yeah.
in
Mm.
communion. and I was thinking about where should I go, which church or community should I join. And at the same time, I was also intellectually starting to be more convinced of Orthodoxy because I saw that like the Baptist church with like instruments and freestyle worship is not really it. Like that, I realized that super early, like within 2 or 3 months of exploring Christianity.
Yeah.
So I was kind of leading towards. I really liked the traditional Catholicism at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean the aesthetics of it, but
Yeah.
I soon realized that that's almost ancient past. That's really not
Yeah.
modern day Catholicism. So when I saw that I do not belong in any other tradition, I finally decided to just go across the street and talk to my priest and go to confession first time in like ever at
Yeah.
23.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah. And did so in Serbia they have like there's lots of different denominations. Like even though it is a predominantly Orthodox country, there is these like, Protestants and Catholics and everything there.
yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, that's not really the case
Mhm.
because when you say Protestantism here, Anglicans do not exist basically except in Belgrade,
Mhm.
the small community of them. But you don't have Anglican church. You have a Lutheran church, but they're like national Slovakian churches or something.
Mm.
So when American people in the states are speaking about Orthodoxy, and they all say, "Oh, they are kind of using their own languages, their own nationalities and stuff."
Mm.
That's the case in Serbia, but for Protestantism and even
Oh,
Catholicism,
interesting.
because
Yeah.
in the Vojvodina region where I live in, there is a certain percentage of Hungarian people, and even though every single one of them is born in Serbia and know how to speak Serbian perfectly. Their church service is in Hungarian language, except the readings of the Gospels. So even if I, as a Serbian guy, wanna submit to Rome and to Pope and go Catholic, I wouldn't understand anything. Even though everybody around me know how to speak Serbian, but yet they're sticking to Hungarian, and it's the same for these Protestant Slovakian churches. Uh, and when you even if you want to go Protestant, if you want to go that route, you either have 7 day Adventism or you have Baptist churches that are more like Pentecostal churches, where they have almost nothing to do with Baptist theology. So you're not going to be happy in the Balkans or this part of Europe if you want to go other routes other
Mm.
than Orthodoxy. And when I hear American apologists claiming that uh, Catholicism is so universal that everyone belongs to, that's not the case. As I just said, like they're just focused on their communities in Serbia, the Slovakians, Hungarians, and other nationalities.
Yeah, exactly. It's really just like an American Anglo-sphere argument where they're like, "Oh, our churches, are accepting of everyone." But it's like they're just not seeing that every church is made up of people and, they're going to want their language spoken. Like even in the US, there's, churches where it's primarily a Hispanic population, so they do all Spanish. So it's like that isn't a good argument, and it's really just an Anglo-Spear argument. When you look at the rest of the world, it's like ultimately, it's not just about the language or anything like that. It's about what church is true. So how was it coming back to confession and like really understanding the importance of the Eucharist and like really starting to get to, well, I guess for the first time, really living that Orthodox life.
Well, I was really happy because my conscience was a bit worrying me because I realized that I lived in sin for my entire life. I never felt grace. I never came in contact with grace except at those moments when I was looking at the Gospels for the first time. But other than that, I didn't really experience grace at all. So I was a bit concerning about that. And that is why it was really important for me to finally confess my sins and to take the Lord's Supper for the first time. It was quite a big deal for me. And I'm so grateful and happy that I can do it because, as I said, it takes me 20 seconds to go into my church, while
Yeah.
some of you guys are traveling for hours and hours just to attend the church service.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when you were reading the Gospels for the first time, did anything really stick out to you? Like, obviously, repentance is a huge theme, is like coming to God. You had you were aware of your sin, and, coming back to confession, it is participating in that repentance. And so, what really stuck out to you when reading the Gospels?
Well, I guess at first it was the way the how the words sounded so profound.
Yeah.
Like I fell in love with that because I actually started reading the Gospels in English before reading them in Serbian, and that profound. That is why I love the Psalms so much. Psalms, like they're
Oh,
so
yeah,
profound, they're so edifying,
they
they're
are.
so deep, and it took me some time to realize just how interconnected the Bible is, and how
Yeah.
everything is a reference to something else that happened before. So, yeah, like Scripture is truly amazing.
Yeah, it is how it's this consistent themes throughout the Bible. The Old Testament is like a shadow that is fulfilled in the new, and it's like all of this is given even like grander meaning. And I love in the Orthros service and in Vespers just reading the Psalms, and it's like just reading it again and again, and then when you really understand it in your heart, you're like you realize how deep this is, and how amazing the faith is. And it's really awesome that we have all these saints, even in saints in the Old Testament, like the prophet Saint David. He was a terrible sinner. He did really, really, awful things, and yet he continually repented, and he wanted to get better. And so it's like if he can endure and continue repenting, it really gives us an example of what we can do. What I enjoy.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And so now I want to talk about your YouTube channel. Is when did you decide, I want to start making some videos? Because you honestly, your channel has some really beautiful like graphics. Like you're very talented with the thumbnails and the whole presentation. It's very professional. So what kind of inspired you to do that, and what are your kind of goals with that?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle.
Mhm.
Um, well, it started when I was like scrolling on Twitter and saw some Catholics basically arguing that Orthodox Christians are being too toxic, and and I myself also witnessed that happening. So I wanted to spread a message or make my first video telling them to chill out a little bit, that we need to show the fruits of
Yeah.
our faith, and that's how it started, and it got immediate intention attention. So I was like, well, this is doing something. Let me try another topic, and so on. That's basically
Wow.
how it started. And about uh, if it was the perfect conditions, I wish if I could make every single video visually appealing, something like Harmony or Dio Creative, and channels of sorts, because I used to edit anime before. I used to make AMVs, and I used to do
Wow.
that for a living
Wow.
for a few years. So I'm quite experienced with YouTube, with handling the YouTube channel and stuff. And I kinda baptized though that editing abilities and that creativity into what what I have today.
That's really awesome, and that's what we should do. Is like that's what's really cool about Orthodox theology is that all of these things can be baptized and used for good, and that's one thing that I really loved and was healing about Orthodoxy is like God didn't come to just condemn us and the world's evil. It's more like God came to heal it, and we can baptize and transform everything, including our skills. Is like maybe we have a certain skill that we're really skilled in that we're using for something, but then when we come into the faith, we can use that to glorify God. It's just knowing that we can use we're given certain talents and we can baptize that and use it for good. It's why I love Christianity. Um, and I think you touched on a really important point with your first topic. Is that something that I've tried to correct myself on over the years? Is being toxic as a Christian, because I think it's especially a pitfall if you're coming into the faith from a just an intellectual point of view. Is it's very easy to have that zeal, and zeal is not a bad thing if it's tempered by love, but zeal without love, it loses the whole point. Is like that's what Christ came to do, is to do everything in love, to have the correct disposition of our heart. And so I've been really trying to correct myself because I came in through that highly intellectualized version and kind of a polemical version. But then when you start getting in the church and you're reading the saints, you're like, it's we're not supposed to be in a constant state of that. It's like, yes, you will see like certain holy fathers, have a few polemical statements, but it's normally just like one or two, where they're fighting a heresy just once, and it's like they were a very holy person who devoted their entire life to God. They weren't constantly in these polemical over intellectualized debates. Is they were focusing on the spiritual life. Is that was their formation? Um, and they speak very sternly about these things because in love, and that's a hard thing to do. And so I think that's a huge pitfall for people who are new, is to not fall into that temptation of pride and toxicity, because it's like Orthodoxy has all of the most satisfying intellectual answers, and that can make us, very, proud of our faith and very, zealous for it. And we should want to spread the faith. But the Bible is so clear and the saints are so clear that if we don't do it in love, that it's pointless. Because I think if we do that, then we're turning Christianity into just an ideology instead of what it is the royal path. Is it transcends these worldly things of like right and left. Is it's really like a next level thing. Is I think it's easy for people to get intellectually convinced of Christianity and be like, okay, I'm on the right side, I've got the right opinion, and everything's good now. Now we just need to destroy the other side, and everything will be good. But it's like when you read the saints, they knew that they were first among sinners. They really thought that they were the most evil people because they saw that evil isn't just, a group of people somewhere. Evil is something in our heart, and we don't want to destroy our own heart. And so that's it's really important, I think, is that however you come into the church, it's important to have that spiritual formation and reading the Orthodox spirituality, so we can really mimic those saints. That's what we're called to do? Because if Christianity just turns into an ideological thing where you have the right opinion, so you're good, and it's not about holiness, then it's like lost the essence of it. Is like that's what sticks out to me, and that's what your videos, you are citing the works of very holy people of how they approach these things, and I think you have I think that's really important, and that's what we need more of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to push my narrative and my
Yeah.
opinions too
Hmm.
much. As well, I don't want to argue like with the other people. Uh, I think that spreading knowledge and facts is the most powerful
Yeah.
thing. And if you include beautiful visuals, that's something truly special and unique.
Yeah.
For example, as Harmony does in his videos. And I never saw anyone making any reactions to his arguments or to his videos,
Yeah,
especially
that's true.
about the icons. Like it is such a popular documentary, and no one bothered to address it in any way.
Yeah.
And I think that's telling.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's a really great point. Is that instead of just focusing on responding to someone, which a lot of my earlier videos were response videos, and I think there can be a place for response videos, is that instead we just focus on the facts. We focus on the truth. We focus on just making something beautiful. And I think that's a great example with Harmony. Is that if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. I think it's called The Secret History, The Hidden History of Christian Images. It is an excellent video showing that the theology of iconography has always been a part of the faith. And so these people who want to make polemical things or quote mine, people in church history to try and, disprove icons, it's like they don't want to respond to this because this is so beautiful and so true. And it's like, why would you want to destroy that? And so that's really cool. And so you've been trying to kind of do that approach too of like, just here's the facts, here's what orthodoxy is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw that you actually made a documentary on holy images and art. And I remember coming into Orthodoxy is like I never really had a problem with icons, coming from, I was Catholic before. And so the theology of icons is definitely way more present in Orthodoxy than Catholicism. It's like I never venerated an icon in a Catholic church. I never saw like really pretty iconography in the church. Like it's very minimalistic. Um, I think that's a lot of like Protestant and Puritan influence, unfortunately. But getting into Orthodox theology, we realize this is the center of the faith. This is the center of the incarnation of like God becoming man, and us being made in the image of God. And like you brought up, the Eucharist and communion is like, how is that possible without this incarnational principle? Because clearly the Eucharist is more than just bread and wine. It is the real presence. And it's like when we go to the root of the apostles and like how the ancient people approached the world, is they approached it that the physical and spiritual were one, not this modern thing where they're separate and the spiritual is like the something else and the physical's something else. It's like they're one. And so how was it making that documentary, and like what were your big takeaways from that?
Well, I mean, I arguing for icons using theology and arguing for icons using archaeology and history
Mm.
are two different things.
Yeah.
And when we bring up theology of the icons, we can see uh, those who disagree with it will use mostly their emotions in trying to dispute them because they feel uncomfortable with them, therefore they cannot be true or ancient. And I kinda got sick of that, of seeing that. So I wanted to look more into history and archaeology because you can't argue with that. Those are just facts, no matter how you feel about it. So I've found this great book called The Dawn of Christian Icons, uh, and I've seen that uh, in Fayum region and Egyptian region, uh, around the time of Christ, there were these Fayum mummy portraits that immediately when you look at them, you see incredible similarities between those and Christian icons. And those Fayum portraits were not devotional images; they were simply portraits for the departed uh, people to capture their likeness. And I think it's safe to say that early portrait icons that you see in synagogues or in tradition, that they're inspired stylistically by those mummy portraits, because at the end of the day, most of those Gentiles, Egyptians, were converts to Christianity, and they baptized their uh, 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 their style of worshiping, but this time not the pagan deities, but the true God of Christianity. And we can see that happening even with the pagans, because in Harmony's documentary there is mentioning of that fresco of Solomon, where Solomon, a Jewish king, a Jewish figure, is represented as a Roman judge with Roman centurions around him, and it's depicting the scene where uh, two mothers are arguing whose child it is. So they kind of were inspired by this wise, powerful king, Jewish king Solomon, and they depicted it as a Roman judge. And we can see that continuity even with the icons, where Christ is perhaps wearing a philosopher's robes, or is presented as a wise man. So I think almost immediately after the spread of Christianity, we can see the uh, the evidence for existence of Christian art, especially portraits that again took their style, their aesthetical style from Fayum mummy portraits.
Yeah. It's really cool to me just reading the Old Testament too, and seeing how much emphasis there is on just having imagery in the temple, having a beautiful ornate temple, like the priest's vestments in the Old Testament, and then seeing that continuity in the New Testament. To me, that's really cool. And then seeing, like the information you brought up in the information from Harmony, that ancient Christianity was never iconoclastic, is that you go to the catacombs in Rome and they had these beautiful images everywhere. And it's not just like, oh, they just like drawing pictures. It's there's a consistent tradition that seems to be passed down of like what icons they're going to have where, and these. So I think that's really amazing. And I think the archaeological evidence and art history evidence is is a really strong point, along with the theological evidence.
Yeah, but again, it's hard to theologically argue because our opponents will simply reject those
Yeah.
premises.
Eh,
So I want to put an we should focus on the fact on how those frescoes and icons were positioned, how in what pose did the characters were uh, represented in, because I can't prove that Christians like literally physically venerated those icons, but I can see that that veneration is captured on the walls of those catacombs. That it is not a coincidence that our characters are raising their hands towards the heaven. I think that there's something more deep in that, and we need to use all the evidence we have, archaeological evidence, to try to prove our theological stand. And if you, at that point, if you're still rejecting that premise and all that, then you're in deep pre-list, I think.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the for them, just the paradigm they're coming from, the archaeological evidence can be more undeniable than they can twist their way around theology and stuff. But the archaeological evidence, it's like, look at it's present in all these like places that the early Christians were. So it clearly was not a later invention. They're the only way they can deny it is say, oh well, those were the heretical groups, or some basically just denial of it. But yeah, the archaeological evidence is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean they all read the Old Testament. I mean, I
Yeah.
kind of got bored from the quoting the fact that the cherubims on the ark, the pictures in the Solomon's temple, or the sacrificial bulls. Like it's kind of got to the point where they all know that existed and it was present, but they're still somehow fitting that into their iconoclastic
Yeah.
framework. And I I mean, I think that's just ignorance. So I don't see much point in bringing that up over and over again. Instead, we should just focus on the tangible things that we can see with our very eyes, such as those archaeological findings.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Is we gotta speak to where people are at. Is yeah, they're aware of this stuff. It's just we gotta bring up the things that that they can't. They can go to these places and see it for themselves. But
Yeah, and it's the same principle for most of the debates nowadays. I mean, just look at the James 2. Like I got tired of hearing that over and over. When one side will bring James 2 and the other side will spin the
yeah.
words to fit into their theology. I mean, I just got bored, and I think we need
Yeah.
something new. We need something fresh.
Mhm.
It just lost any point at this level.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's especially a problem in today's age, I think, is just the information overload. Is like, I mean, all these debates have happened since the beginning. It's like faith alone and all these different debates have happened in the Protestant Reformation. And so, like, now with the age of the internet, it's just like multiplied, where now there's like thousands of people having these debates and saying, well, this verse means this and this. And it's like, okay, maybe what's needed is we're going to have to bring in some new evidence to the situation so we don't just rehash the same debate. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
interesting.
even among the early Protestant circles, for example, you have John Knox,
Hmm.
who was like Scottish reformer,
Yeah.
and he actually refused uh, for for a s- uh, some time. He used to attend Anglican church,
Hmm.
but he removed himself from the church because at that time Anglicans still kneeled for the communion,
Hmm.
and he saw that as something wrong,
Oh
and
no.
he didn't wanna budge. He didn't wanna adapt to that. Instead, he simply left. He wasn't like excommunicated. He
Yeah.
didn't have any beef with them, but he kind of just left. He was like, I don't feel, I'm not comfortable with this, and that goes against the spirit that Redeemed Zoomer has. Because
Yeah.
according to Redeemed Zoomer, you should not leave the church even if your pastor is female and liberal and whatnot.
Yeah.
While John Knox didn't allow for any instruments in the church. He didn't allow, obviously, for female clergy, and he didn't want to kneel for the communion.
Hmm.
Like, according to John Knox, he wouldn't attend any of the most of the Presbyterian churches today, and he would willingly remove himself from them, which is totally against the Reconquista movement and the modern Protestant way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think if you take redeem Zoomer's logic to its logical conclusion of the Protestants need to stop schisming and return to the historic mainline denominations. Well, why stop there? Like, why not? Okay, shouldn't they return to Rome? And shouldn't Rome return to the Orthodox Church? It's like, it's just drawing the line kind of arbitrarily. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Is that a lot of these reformers, they left for reasons that uh, would seem small to a Protestant today, and ultimately, I think Redeem Zoomer has a more worldly approach to it of like, what's gonna, he focuses a lot on, like what helps the institutions and Presbyterians and these and Protestant denominations started these universities and they have the best intellectual theology. But then when you compare that with Orthodoxy, Orthodoxy is about not just knowing the gospel, but like living it. It's like when you read it, it's like you have to actually live this gospel. And that's what we see in the Orthodox saints is that in every age there is martyrs. There is people. We're all called to die to Christ and to live our faith. And it's not just an intellectual thing. It's something that we actually um, are participating in every day.
Yeah, I mean, the Byzantines uh, who founded the concept of hospital. The Saint
Mm-hmm.
Basil the
Yeah.
Great started this institution when you're feeling sick and you just walk in to get healed,
Mm-hmm.
and also the universities and such. So
Yeah.
that 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 framework that the West started these universities and schools, and the East did nothing. I mean, it's really shallow.
It is. It's completely shallow. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, was the longest lasting empire in human history, and it's just because we're in, people are in the West. They have this certain narrative that's taught to them, but it's not actual reality. It's like all of these, like it's like this huge history of the East is just completely forgotten. It's like, oh, it was the Dark Ages, and then it was the Enlightenment and Renaissance. But it's like the East was doing things, lots of things, and so it's just it's a certain narrative that is sadly very common. And luckily, I think that narrative is finally getting unraveled as people are like, the West has serious problems, like serious fundamental problems. And so people are starting to deconstruct the West. And ideally, we can, deconstruct it to get back to, when the West was Orthodox. And I think that's what's exciting about the future is the West returning to its Orthodox roots and not continuing down this path of destruction. But
Yeah.
yeah. And so I wanted to ask you about being in Serbia. How is the spiritual state of Serbia? I mean, Serbia has gone through a lot in the past century, the past few decades. And so how do you see it being in Serbia?
Well, honestly, it's pretty sad. It's not good at all. And I don't think if it's communism or is it secularism or whatever it is, but something is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the amount of people that are living liturgically, like, is miserable. Like it's I think that only few percent of the population are actually Christian, and it's not entirely their fault. I think that church is responsible for it as well, because let me ask you: did you go through catechism? Were you catechized before becoming Orthodox?
Yes, I was.
And your wife as well, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we don't do that here at all. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have that, like literally at all. All you need to do is to find the number of your priest and say, "Yo, I want to get baptized," and he will be like, "Yeah, sure, come this Friday," and it's done. And there are so many people that in my place that were baptized in my church that I never have seen before prior to their baptism, and I will never see them after their baptism. And I think that's that's sad. That's terrible. And I'm not sure why the church does that. Maybe the church hierarchy assume that since we are Orthodox, we have this rich Orthodox history, therefore we don't need catechism or something. Like I can't figure out why would someone do that. But yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And the only connection to the church that Serbian people have mostly is through the tradition of Slava, where they celebrate the feast day of a certain saint. Uh, and even those Slavas are not Orthodox for the most part. They are usually just excuses to get drunk and talk about
Wow.
politics. So yeah, it's. I mean, that's why I'm Orthodox loner at the end of the day. Like some people uh, mentioned, oh, how can you be Orthodox and loner? Well, this is how. I literally feel like I'm living in Babylon. Like the
Wow.
secularism is deep in Serbia. And at least we still know how many genders there are. Like we're not that far gone,
Yeah.
but it's pretty bad.
Yeah. I think that's really important to know that ultimately, if you're following Christ, no matter where you're at, there is going to be some amount of loneliness to it because like no matter what empire, like even if you're in the Byzantine Empire, it's like all these things still exist of people in it for the wrong reason, and like ultimately people who are taking their faith really seriously are gonna be a minority. But I think on that specific issue, I think that the issue is in America too, because ultimately the catechism should be by the parents. Is like, yes, there should be, Sunday school. In America, it's, some are good, some are bad. Some, like, if you hear a lot of atheist experiences, normally they leave because they heard something ridiculous in Sunday school or something like that. So the same thing kind of exists in America. But that's why I think specifically for people who are Orthodox and taking their faith seriously, is like when you're having kids, you got to be really involved in their life. Is like you can't just expect someone else or the church or school to teach them everything. Is like it's really important that the parents are catechizing their children. And I think Serbia's in a unique situation, still kind of recovering from communism, where it was illegal to go to church. And there's this tradition of like not going to church and or just coming for these certain events because of that. And then there's also secular, there's communism coming from the east, and then there's secularism and Western influence. And so it's a uniquely tough challenge, and that's why it's we can't control people, and we can't fix it all ourselves. What we can do is be a good influence, be a saint by recognizing the holiness in others, trying to teach our kids well in the faith. And yeah, that's a very unique challenge. And I'm sorry that you're going through that, where it's like you're in this Orthodox country, but and it's like it seems like everything should be better because it's a country that has been Orthodox, but at the same time there's a loneliness to it because there's a lot of cultural Christianity where people just go and they get baptized, and then they know all this stuff, and they believe it. They believe in God, but they're not living it out. They're not taking the faith seriously. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, my church is basically full of old people. Like I can't find my generation or uh, uh, younger guys going to the church like at all. Maybe for the Easter, for the celebrations of holidays, but yeah, other than that, it's pretty sad even to witness that
Yeah.
weekly. So there is another factor that makes me lonely in the church because I'm the youngest guy there.
Mm-hmm.
And the bishop Athanasius Yevtic, who reposed a few years ago, said that a man is a living cross, because when you're standing straight, you're pointing upwards, and that's your love for God. And when you spread your hands like this, you're pointing to your neighbor,
Yeah.
and that is how, by being that living cross, you fulfill God's commandments. But in my church, I'm not seeing that. In my society, I'm not seeing that from the Christians,
Yeah.
and even those who are calling themselves Christian. So it's a quite lonely and depressing sight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's really important is like we have this really unique challenge is like I guess the threats of living in 2025, the current year, is not like in other ages. It was like there was just another religion and it was just like kind of direct violence. But now it's like the threat is like basically indifference, where there's so many distractions that people would rather just watch, Netflix or, do different social events, soccer, like whatever idol it is. It's like there's just so much stuff to keep people busy and distracted from those really important existential questions of like, where am I going to go when I die? Am I checking myself with the sins I'm struggling? Like a lot of people don't even believe in sin, or they don't take it seriously. And so I think our challenge is like we're in this unique situation where we're in like almost a post-Christian societies where it's like these societies used to be Christian. It used to have a much bigger influence. But now it's like with the rise of secularism, agnosticism, it's like how do we reach people? And I think YouTube is very key. Is that it's great that both of us were trying to speak to people and young people too. I think speaking to young people is really key. And so I think if you continue to make videos, if you aren't already in Serbian too, so people like they have. I think people need people who are in their same situation speaking to them, because I think a lot of people feel this way, but they need like a symbol, or they need a channel or something that can just that they can relate to. And I think that's what's been good about Orthodoxy in America is there's been lots of voices that are speaking to young people. And me being young, I'm only 25, and I know how I've lived the same experiences as these people, and so just being able to relate to them at that level and to talk about my experiences, that can be so powerful. And that's why I love interviewing different people, is because they relate to that. Is like doing this where I talk to people. It's like people relate to this because people have these different paths. If they're raised Protestant, they're raised without a religion, they're raised cradle Orthodox, they're just baptized and they never take their faith seriously, but then they come back to the faith. Is like ultimately we need I think we're doing what's right. Is like we need to speak to these to our brethren. So yeah.
Yeah, I kinda think that's the job of our bishops
Yeah.
and patriarch, because in Serbia they are semi celebrities basically,
Mm-hmm.
because when they show up somewhere, the news right like capture that visitation or activity.
Mm-hmm.
However, I assume when your bishop in America shows up somewhere, no one really cares, especially the media.
Mm-hmm.
But in Serbia, they're almost like celebrities,
Mm-hmm.
and they have the power to reach the broader audience, the young
Yeah.
people, but they're not doing it for I don't know what's the reason, but they're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of sharing this be a good boy Christianity, be good, be loving, and as long as you're loving and kind, you're good. I mean, it's kind of almost false message and point entirely. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty discouraging, and I'm trying to do something for my parish.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, I created a blog for my church. I created pamphlets for my
Yeah.
church. I bought from my first YouTube paycheck. I bought the Catechism by Saint Nikolai Velimirovich.
Mm.
I tried to catechize people decades after they are being baptized,
Mm.
because they weren't catechized prior to baptism.
Yeah.
But I can do only so much.
Yeah.
I feel so powerless at times.
Yeah.
But in the future, I'm hopeful that I will be able to do greater things for my parish at least.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great what you're doing. And that's what we all need to do. Is we need to just, not everyone has to have a YouTube channel. It's just making a difference at your local parish, being able to help your priest, help new people, help people, and helping people stay in the church too, is like by taking your faith seriously and like talking to them and being kind. This is really important. Is like it's basically like there's this huge value in Orthodoxy, and it's just like people forget about it because they just get distracted by other things, especially in Serbia. I'm really happy being a part of the Serbian tradition because of how amazing the Serbian saints are. Like Saint Nikolai Velimirovic, his writings are absolutely amazing. The prologue of Orid, which is the lives of the saints, his homilies. I mean, he really is the Serbian Chrysostom. He's an amazing writer. Saint Justin Popovic, he's really amazing. It's just reconnecting with that. Is like people just need to be aware of this of this gold mine that Orthodoxy is. And I think that's what's happening in America is Orthodoxy's been an undercurrent. It's been the best kept secret in America, but now people are really finding out about it and they're participating. And so, um, there is challenges and there's opportunity. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we need figures like them in
Yeah,
today's day and age,
yeah,
especially in
we do.
Serbia, where words will not be sugar coated and
Hmm.
softened for to appeal the broader audience. I mean, that's exactly what
Yeah,
Rome is doing right now. They're
exactly.
being so soft. They're sugarcoating their entire religion so much that they're accepting LGBT population, uh,
Yeah,
pro- gay processions
hmm,
in Saint Peter's.
yeah,
They even made, if I'm not mistaken, a dedicated spaces in the Vatican Library for Muslims to pray if they need to.
yeah,
Like the Vatican II is basically that.
yeah,
We are all God's children. We just need to be good boys. We just need to be happy. We just need to have a good conscience, and we shall be saved ultimately. I mean that's the false message. If you read Saint Justin Popovich, you'll see that he is pretty sharp, pretty critical of
exactly.
heresies, especially papism and Protestantism. And I don't think because the politics is another factor why today hierarchs will not speak like that because they don't want to offend the Catholics and Protestants, Protestant population, and maybe even presidents of another country. Because, as I said, they are almost semi-celebrities here, and they are involved in politics a lot.
Yeah,
While your bishop, I guess, has nothing to do with politics. He's powerless. No one cares about him. Because you're so small. You're
yeah,
a minority there,
yeah,
and that is why I appreciate the Orthodoxy in America because it stayed uh, pure. It stayed independent from the influence of a country because again, not many people care about you guys.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, when my bishop comes, a lot of people come. A lot of the like Serbian people I don't really see all year. They'll come and visit him.
Yeah,
But
it's the same thing with me. But my bishop come,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
comes only once a year for a slava for a church slava. That's it.
yeah, yeah. My old priest he was always so sad when during the Christmas service the church would be so full, and it's like he would be sad. He's like, "Where were you guys all year?" And I think ultimately it is interesting the challenges in when politics get too involved and people just trying to sugarcoat Christianity instead of speaking these truths like the saints do. It's like that's what it needs. That's what every America needs. Saints. We need good bishops who are gonna speak the truth sharply and in love, not just this sugar coated Christianity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even Saint Paisios, who is the most loving person ever, said that we should give this uh, slight uneasiness
Yeah.
to those
Exactly.
outside the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are not seeing, at least in my country, I'm not seeing any of it, like none of it. And that's another sad and depressing factor. So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to find motivation to be Christian because ultimately you're most likely the only one, especially if you're a younger guy like me.
Yeah.
Like all you have is the the politics and you have the grannies in your church and that's what you're working which is not much. But again, I should be grateful that I have opportunity to just
Yeah.
go across the
Yeah.
street to my church and receive the grace of God. I mean, that's a
Exactly.
huge factor, and I should remind myself not to forget that because I
Yeah.
often do. And I should not worship my feelings. And even though it's depressing and lonely, I should not uh, blur God uh,
Mm-hmm.
by focusing too much on my emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Is we can speak about these real pains and suffering and aches, but also be grateful to God. Like St. John Chrysostom says, glory to God in all things. Is like that's ultimately we just need to focus on Christ. Otherwise, just like Peter, we're gonna sink into the ocean. Is there are these real problems that are really scary, but also just keep your eye on Christ. And you know all you can do is give your best to carry your cross. And at the end of the day, all that matters is what God thinks. Doesn't matter what other people think. It's like God knows your heart, and um, God knows your struggle, and like bringing that struggle to Him and letting Him live in you so you can overcome it. Um, it's difficult. It's difficult to endure it, but
Yeah, he who endures till the end will be saved.
exactly, yeah. Well, I really enjoyed this interview. If people have, I would love to do a part two sometime. So if you're interested,
Sure.
just let me. Yeah, okay. And if anyone has any questions or anything you want us to talk about, just comment below because I think this is really cool. Is like an American convert and then someone in Serbia who has come back to the faith. I would love to do more of these. So if anyone has any questions, maybe we can do this again in the future. But thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. Go subscribe to him, and God bless.